Hello and welcome to No Holds Barred with me, Andre Walker. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be talking Brexit deals with TalkRADIO host and former Daily Express editor Mike Graham. And we're going to meet the 15-year-old schoolboy who duped Jeremy Corbyn into admitting he supports terrorism. And of course, we'll be awarding the Order of Lenin to the loony leftist of the week. And trust me, this one is a corker. But first, this week's talking point is about Nigel Farage's ultimate display of patriotism by standing down 317 Brexit Party candidates in seats the Conservatives won in 2017. Now, of course, the move has caused fury and led to the Brexit Party sinking in the polls. Some people say that makes Nigel Farage some sort of closet Tory or a turncoat. There is so much anger that one Remainiac QC on Twitter has offered to help disgruntled candidates sue Farage. But we're all missing the point here. Farage knows that Boris is the only major party leader who believes in Brexit. Sure, his deal isn't much good, but it is easily the best thing anybody could have got through with that duplicitous and disgusting and unpatriotic House of Commons. In truth, the real problem Farage needs to deal with is not Boris. It's not even Joe Swinson. Working class patriots need rid of Remainer Labour MPs in northern towns. Towns that voted Leave. Towns like Wigan. Towns like Warrington. Focusing on the important job of ridding us of these MPs in seats the Tories cannot win is not an act of cowardice. It's an act of courage. Once again, Farage proves himself to be the greatest British patriot since Churchill. And Churchill was, let's all remember, just as maligned throughout his career as Farage has been in his. So I say, well done, Nigel. Keep up the good work. We're going to get Brexit done in the end. That was this week's talking point. Joining me now to discuss this is a giant of broadcasting, former Fleet Street editor and TalkRADIO star, Mike Graham. So Mike, welcome. What do you make of this whole, Nigel Farage standing down? You know, a lot of people have said that he's being unpatriotic. I personally think it's a great act of courage.
Well, I think it has been a great act of courage. I think nobody really expected it. I think it's pretty clear that there's been a massive row inside the Brexit Party where there's some people who are now going after him. Believe it or not, one of the most surreal moments of this entire surreal campaign, which is what it is to me, is that Jolyon Maugham, or Jolyon Moron as I like to call him, the lawyer to the stars, the guy who keeps taking the government to court, has actually tweeted out in the last 24 hours to anyone who was going to be a Brexit Party candidate, if you'd like to sue the Brexit Party to recover any damages, I'm your man. So, I mean, that's how weird things have got. But for Nigel Farage to basically say, look, it's very clear to me now that standing in every constituency is not going to get Brexit done. In fact, it might hinder Brexit. I think he's done the right thing. I think he's done a brave thing. But I think he's also shown himself to be perhaps not as savvy when it comes to general elections as he is at other types of elections. He's very savvy during the European elections, very savvy when they're running council elections. But when it gets to the general election, he never quite gets it right.
But you've always tried to be the voice of ordinary working class people, the people who get ignored. I mean, I know you can't slag off your rivals, but you go head to head with James O'Brien on LBC, and you work, of course, for TalkRADIO.
Well, I can slag him off, but, I try not to mention him, basically. He's the unmentionable one.
But look, do you feel let down by the political class? And are you hoping that this general election is going to be able to change that?
Well, I'm hoping that Brexit gets done, basically. I mean, I know that is a mantra that everybody says, well, what does it mean? Well, what it means is we get Brexit done. There is a deal which apparently will pass the House of Commons as long as Boris Johnson's got enough people. What I'd like to see, because I don't want to see the Brexit Party leaving this election with nothing. And I think that was what Nigel Farage was worried about, that if, in fact, he stood so many candidates that his his whole party was going to be wiped out, funds were going to be pulled. Aaron Banks was telling him not to do it. Aaron Banks is now back on side. I think if they can get something to the order of about 5 or 6 seats, then they can form some kind of coalition, or at least help the Tories get Brexit done in Parliament. I think that would be a very valid and brilliant way for them to be remembered, because it would be really an awful shame if all of the people who put so much faith in the Brexit Party found their hopes dashed again, because I'm not sure the ordinary working people of this country could take that.
Yeah, the one of the things that's always struck me is this major problem with having Remainiac MPs on Leave voting constituencies. And to me, the political advantage, the main thing that Farage existed for, was to remove these people. And whether you like it or not, the Conservative Party booted out their pro-Europeans.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is an awful lot of people who were in the last Parliament are not going to be in the next one because they're not standing. You know, we've got Hillary Clinton visiting town and telling us all that isn't it awful that all these women are leaving because of the terrible, nasty threats they're getting. Absolute cobblers, they're all leaving because they knew they were going to get kicked out anyway. That's why they're not running this election. Most MPs, if they thought they were going to win the seat, would carry on doing it. You know, the likes of Gork, who thinks that he's going to win in his constituency as an independent. No chance. Dominic Grieve wants to win as an independent. I certainly hope not. So it looks to me as though Parliament will look very different. And I think Boris Johnson was right to cull these people out of the party because the Conservative Party is a pro-Brexit party. I don't care what anybody says.
Well, absolutely. Now, look, you just mentioned Hillary Clinton, but I know that you've interviewed a major American this week in the form of White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon. He was driving. He was making the point that, look, there is an attempt to stop Donald Trump and there is an attempt to stop Brexit, and we need to drain both swamps.
Yes.
You know, that is important, right?
It is. And also, when you get Donald Tusk on his final kind of speech before he leaves office, actually saying, you know, there's still time to stop Brexit, what that tells you is all of these people like Joe Swinson and Grieve and all the others, Steve Doughty, who went to Brussels to talk to the EU Commission to tell them, oh, by the way, you know, if you just keep stalling, we might be able to save this yet. Shows you what traitorous behaviour has been going on. It shows you what Donald Tusk really is all about. And he said, bizarrely and laughably for me, oh, I couldn't have said this when I was properly in office because it might have seemed that I was a bit biased. Oh, really, Donald? You know, so now he's trying to interfere in our election. Funnily enough, we didn't hear any of the same people who moaned about Donald Trump telling Nigel Farage that they should do a deal with Boris Johnson. We don't hear any of them saying, oh, why is Donald Tusk getting involved in our internal country's election process?
Well, it's, you know, Tom Harwood was sat where you were last week, and he simply made the point to me that, look, we thought there was British exceptionalism. We genuinely thought that when a vote happened for us to leave the European Union, it wouldn't be ignored like the vote was ignored in Italy. It wouldn't be ignored. It wouldn't be ignored the same way that votes were in Ireland. You know, are we mugs here?
Well, I think we have been mugs, and I think the problem has been that if Theresa May had not held that election when she did hold it, and she was given advice badly, in my view, by people like Nick Timothy and his co-op woman who was there, Ms. Hill, they both basically were drinking in the last chance saloon, literally, I think. I think they might have both been drunk when they were actually making this suggestion to her. If she hadn't had that election, I think we would have been out of the European Union already, and the pressure within the Tory party would have been brought to bear on Theresa May to make it as hard as possible. But she managed to screw that whole thing up. And so we are where we are. And I think we have been let down. But finally, I think Boris Johnson is a guy that can make stuff happen. And I think Dominic Cummings is way too clever for any of the other people.
Well, they always said that, you know, people have accused Nigel Farage of being a closet Tory. But one of the things that Nigel Farage always said is the Labour Party are never going to pull out of the EU.
No.
The Liberal Democrats are never going to pull out of the EU. The only thing you can do is bolster a patriotic party. Now, I accept that people who support the Brexit Party might not be Conservatives. That's why they're not voting Conservative. But the idea of some sort of Leave alliance, if there's a Remain alliance, has to happen.
Well, I think it does. And I think there will be individual cases, which we will see over the course of the next few weeks, where people are actually standing down. I don't think Boris can afford to say to his party, all right, we're now going to officially stand candidates down so the Brexit Party can win. But I think you might see the odd kind of disappearance, by the way, of somebody who for some reason is unable to stand in that seat anymore.
Well, there's always in every election a paper candidate, people who just sign up just so the national tally is bigger. I'm sure that they won't be targeting particularly some of these seats, because you're talking about seats in the north of England where the Conservatives would be killed if they walked down the streets.
Well, exactly right. And there's no point, it would seem to me, in splitting the Leave vote. But by the way, in those kinds of seats, I don't think that actually a Tory party running a candidate would do much difference anyway, make much difference or do much harm, because there's not many people going to vote for them in any event.
So, Mike, final question. What's your prediction for the result then?
For the result, wow, that is a tough one, because as I've said, I mean, I had this election process to me described today as the Have I Got News For You election, because it's actually so mad that it's kind of surreal. I mean, seeing Boris Johnson sitting in an electric cab trying to drive it at about 2 miles an hour very gingerly around a factory floor, and then to see Jeremy Corbyn walking away from some Scottish pastor, it turns out, giving him a hard time about Hamas and Hezbollah what do you say about all these terrorists you're mates with? You know, you just don't know what's going to happen next. I think there will be a Tory majority. I think it will be of the order of about 15. I don't know why I have that number in my head.
Yep.
And I think with the Brexit Party, 5, I'm going to say, that's going to be a majority of 20. I've seen all sorts of things. I've seen a majority of 100.
Yep.
You know, I don't think it's going to be that big. I think it's going to be much closer than everybody thinks. But I would say 15 to the Tories and another 5 from Brexit, and we're done.
Well, of course, you've forgotten the DUP, 10.
They're not coming back. They are not coming back. They're gone.
They are a hardy political party.
I mean, I've always said, one of my great theories is that Boris deliberately sacked all of those 21 rebels on the basis not to get rid of them, but to basically say to the DUP, you can't help me anymore, so I'm going to do what I like.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened.
Well, Mike Graham, Talk Radio star and former Fleet Street journalist, absolutely amazing, voice of the ordinary working class patriotic people. Now, time for video of the week.
And just staying on foreign policy, in 2011, after US Special Forces killed Osama bin Laden, you said it was a tragedy that the Al-Qaeda leader was dead, rather than being captured and put on trial. So is the recent death of ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi a tragedy?
If we preach international law and international legal process through the International Court of Justice in The Hague, then we should carry it out. And if it's possible to arrest somebody and put them on trial, then that is what should have been done, and that is what I said about the death in 2011, and it would continue to be my principle. If we believe, as we do, in international law and justice and the power of the International Court of Justice, then we should do everything we can to bring people where they deserve to go on trial to be put on trial, as was Milosevic and others.
I mean, while nobody celebrates the death of another human being, this is a man whose victims were drowned in cages, and some of his victims were British, so is his death not something to be looked at as a good thing?
Him being removed from the scene is a very good thing. If it would have been possible to arrest him, I don't know the details of the circumstances at the time. I've only seen various statements put out by the US about it. Surely that would have been the right thing to do. If we want to live in a world of peace and justice, we should practice it as well.
Well, there you have it. Attempting to arrest a guy who was about to blow himself up. By the way, he blew up his own children as well. Not the sort of man that I would want back in Britain. But you know, it does show the danger of Jeremy Corbyn, the dangerous naivety of a man who could become the British Prime Minister. And don't you tell me that can't happen, because in 2017 he came dangerously close. And part of the reason for that is because of support of young people. Because if you read the mainstream media or the newspapers, you'll be told that young people absolutely love Jeremy Corbyn. After all, he's just like Father Christmas, an old man with a white beard promising free toys to naive kids. But one 15-year-old from Gloucestershire has thrown off the reputation that young people have for loving Corbyn by tricking him into signing a document admitting his support for terrorism. That young man is Thomas Chambers, and he's here right now. Thomas, how did this come about?
Over the half term, I was working. I heard that it's coming to Gloucester Uni campus, so I quickly rushed home. I print off the poster. On the poster, it says how he supports terrorism, he's an anti-Semite, he's on the Iran TV payroll. With the anti-Semitism part, the Labour Party are discriminatory to Jews and how they receive lots of anti-Semitic comments. With the terrorism part, he stated he's friends with Hamas and Hezbollah. Also with the Iranian TV part, he got paid 20 grand to go on their TV show, and Iran are the people who doubled down on a threat to attack Britain recently, and he's gone on their TV shows.
Wow, look, I mean, one of the things that people say about young people is that they don't know a lot about politics. I mean, clearly, you've pretty well briefed yourself on this. You understand what's going on. But one of the things that just struck me was, that you mentioned that you came back from work. And obviously, a lot of young people don't have jobs, and presumably the fact you do work is why you feel the way you do. But, how much support does Jeremy Corbyn have amongst young people?
On the mainstream media, it says he gets a lot. But however, in my school, I've received nothing but praise, and they thought it was all hilarious, presuming that they do not like him. And
also, it was supposed to be a big meeting at Gloucestershire University, but you reckon it wasn't quite as big as what they were saying?
No, I saw probably about maximum of 5 students there. The rest were all old people. I was quite surprised about that, to be honest.
Yeah, because, of course, there's all these hippie lefty type people, the vegan crowd
Yeah.
and people like that. I just wonder whether we're being unfair to young people and saying that they're too stupid to understand about Jeremy Corbyn, saying they're too stupid to understand about terrorism and anti-Semitism. But it sounds like you feel like maybe in your school, people are not that naive.
No, I believe people have got quite good sense at my school, as there's agreeing with me with what I've done, and they just don't agree with Jeremy Corbyn and how he acts.
And if you were to be, I know you're not able to vote at the moment, you're only 15, but what would be your message to young people across the country about the dangers in this election?
I advise them to, when they can, grow up. If he's still in power, do not vote for him. He's a dangerous man. He doesn't know how to run the country properly.
And I suppose there's always a big question about whether young people are willing to be conservative now. Look, as you said before, you have a part-time job, therefore you're a taxpayer, therefore presumably you're going to be more conservative than average. But, do you think that Boris Johnson gets any cut-through with young people? I mean, do your friends at school like him?
Well, all of my friends are the Conservative Party. We all like the Conservative Party. We love Boris. We believe he's a great man.
Now, also, look, it's very obvious that you've come into this studio today. You're a bit of a chancer, a bit of a troublemaker. What more trouble are you going to cause in this election?
Well, I might just go to the next meeting, make him sign a resignation letter, do us all a favour.
That'd be absolutely sensational. Well, look, I suppose the other question is about your future and what you're going to do. I mean, look, here at Leading Edge and here at No Holds Barred, we're desperate to see you get more involved in politics. Are we going to see you in the future maybe run for Parliament?
I'd love to pursue a career in politics. It's an amazing job to do.
And I suppose attempting to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn is going to be your first act of what we hope will be a glittering career.
It's my first goal and I want to pursue that.
Absolutely. Well, hey, look, we need more people, more young people like Thomas Chambers who are willing to stand up to Jeremy Corbyn because, of course, he is a danger, not just to older people, not just to Jewish people, not just to those who oppose terrorism, but actually the young people who he wishes to saddle with debt and leave them, permanently in economic strife. Anyway, Thomas, thank you so much for coming in. Now, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. We reveal who is going to get this Order of Lenin. That is our award for Loony Lefty of the Week. And this week we've got two nominees, Prince Harry and his lovely Hollywood snowflake Meghan Markle. Not content with jetting around the world while simultaneously bleating on about climate change, these hypocrites in chief are now snubbing the Queen's Christmas family get-together, which, always remember, might be the Duke of Edinburgh's last one, as he's 97 years old. This isn't the first time Meghan has snubbed the Queen. When she edited Vogue, she dedicated the front page to significant women. She included all the usual suspects, like Greta Thunderbird, but couldn't find space to mention her boss, the British monarch. She wasn't, of course, going to snub the Queen's offer of a free house on the Windsor estate. After all, leftists are nothing if not parasitic. Now, I can't give the award to Prince Harry because he did serve his country in Afghanistan and by all accounts is a nice, if slightly thick, guy. I say Meghan has led him astray. Who knew that just after we thought we'd defeated communism, a member of the British royal family would bring it back? Now, unfortunately, Harry and Meghan couldn't be here today, but we've got this wonderful cardboard cutout of them, which actually, in the case of Meghan, has more personality than the real thing. Well, anyway, Harry, Meghan, I'm sorry you couldn't be here. Glad that these puppets were here on your behalf. We'll be sending you the Order of Lenin, just as we sent it to Jeremy Corbyn last week. Well, this week, of course, has been all about the old and the new. Mike Graham, star of TalkRADIO, thank you so much. And Thomas Chambers, rising star of conservatism, well done. And keep up the fight against international terrorism and socialism, which, of course, we'll be doing again when we join you next week. Before then, goodbye.